Hi, this is Sav,
Katie,
and Caitlin
from The Accidentals. You're listening to Your Morning Coffee podcast with our friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Luminate, the growth of vinyl and the impact of independent record stores on vinyl sales.
From Music Business Worldwide, super premium music subscription tiers coming in 2025, and 3 other things we learned from Universal Music's Boyd Muir at the Morgan Stanley Conference.
And from the New York Times, no more nostalgia concerts. Please. Gosh, that's going to really eliminate a lot of concerts if we don't have nostalgia concerts. Well, listen, we've got so much to talk about. Jay and I are really happy you are here, and we are going to get the boogie going right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
I'm the kind to take the keys. Don't sit in a shotgun seat unless I want to. And you make me want to. Hypnotized by the white lines, your hands 10 and 2 on this heart of mine makes me feel at home. Yeah, boy, I'm right at home. In a 4x4 by you, babe, from the bayou to Kentucky, city to the country, from here to Timbuktu. And boy, after a long day, you know there ain't no wrong way to drive my crazy, crazy in a 4x4 by you. Parked out in the driveway, backed up to a fire on a tailgate, feet on the dashboard.
There you go. That was Lainey Wilson, 4x4 by You, live from the CMA Awards last Wednesday night. That was featuring some of my favorite musicians, Sav Madigan, Katie Larson, and Caitlin Coral from The Accidentals. And thank them for that nice intro. So that's Lainey Wilson's 4x4 by You live, and that is now available everywhere.
There's some good playing on that song for crying out loud.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Really good playing.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, I believe that you and Glenn Peoples actually recorded 2 episodes of the wonderful Billboard Behind the Setlist podcast, 2 in one day.
Oh my gosh. You know, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving this week, so happy Thanksgiving to our listeners.
If you're in the States, obviously.
If you're in the United States, that's right. I have some friends in Canada. They celebrate both.
Different day.
Their Canadian Thanksgiving and the U.S. Thanksgiving. Anyway, we recorded some really special interviews. One was with Tears for Fears, Roland and Kurt, who I've worked with for years off and on, and really have a lot of respect for them. And that Tipping Point album was so good. And now they have a film out that you and I talked about, and a new live album with 4 new tracks. And then we also sat down with a band that I know you really love as well, Lake Street Dive. How did you first find out about Lake Street Dive?
My favorite station is KCSN here in Los Angeles, which is the station out of Cal State Northridge, but they have a huge, huge reach all through LA and even into Orange County. And they've played that. And then I saw them open for, speaking of nostalgia concerts, I saw them open for Jackson Brown.
Oh, what a great night.
Bowl.
Oh,
yes.
That would have been great.
So, I've been a fan. They are, and she, the vocalist, is
Rachel.
fantastic.
Yeah, she's great.
Rachel's fantastic. Yeah.
So if you get a chance, listen to those 2 episodes when they come out. Should be in the next week or two. Tears for Fears and Lake Street Dive. 2 of the most wonderful conversations we've had, and we've done maybe 50 or 60 of these interviews. Glenn Peoples and myself for Billboard Behind the Set List. So check it out.
Well, I really like what you guys do, and the fact that you guys, I know you both research it tremendously, and you don't want this to be a cookie cutter interview, and that's what
that's our goal.
You guys fly your freak flag, and you do the right stuff and ask cool questions. So that's
cool. The fun part, Mike. And just really quickly, when you do that research, and the artists really appreciate it that you don't ask them sort of the cookie cutter questions. So. Thank you for that.
You do your homework.
Yes.
You do your homework. Absolutely. A few things in the news from The Verge. This is by Alex Heath, a deputy editor and author of the Command Line newsletter. Spotify's CEO on why this new video push is different after several fits and starts. Spotify CEO Daniel Ek thinks the company is finally ready to rival YouTube as a destination for video podcasts.
Right. He writes that Spotify's been working to increase the amount of video on the platform for nearly a decade, and there are now more than 300,000 video podcasts on Spotify. Overall time spent watching video is growing faster than audio-only listening time, right? And with video podcasts playing an increasingly important role in culture, Spotify thinks it has an opening to more directly compete with the dominance of YouTube.
Well, Daniel Ek will need to convince video creators that Spotify's new engagement-based payouts can replace and even exceed what they make on YouTube. Many big podcasters are skeptical and worried about cannibalizing their existing audiences and businesses.
So talk a little bit about the Spotify's new engagement-based payouts.
Right. So Spotify is going all in on video. A couple of weeks ago, they announced that they would soon begin paying creators based on how much engagement their videos receive from paid subscribers.
That's interesting. So automatic ad breaks in videos will also be turned off for the paid Spotify subscribers. And that's really meant to encourage more consumption. Both of these changes go into effect starting January 2nd, and that'll be in the US, UK, Australia, and Canada.
Well, we're going to keep an eye on that.
Yes,
really
we will.
Interesting. Another one from Rolling Stone, the 2024 CMA Awards, the best, the worst, and most what the fuck moments. They said WTF, of course, but we know what that means.
Sure
from an elegant tribute to George Strait to a string of bad jokes about Shabuzi, the high and low points of country music's big night. This is by Jonathan Bernstein, David Brown, and Joseph Hudak.
Yeah, over at Rolling Stone. Great piece, you guys. We're just going to have a couple of excerpts from it, but it was really well done. Like, let's start at the beginning. They write that if you told us about the 58th CMA Awards this last Wednesday were actually held 3 decades ago, we would have believed you. The Nashville Awards Gala was loaded with traditional country sounds, a lot of outdated jokes, and even a pair of winners whose heyday was in the mid-90s. Some of the performances put us to sleep, while others reinforced what country music does best: tells stories, sometimes humorously, with charisma and charm. These are the best, worst, and most what the fuck moments from the CMAs.
So they say, a best moment. Lainey Wilson is a Reba-level host, and for the kids, Reba McEntire, by the way. The CMA Awards may just have found their legacy host, and no, it's not Luke Bryan and the quarterback. Co-hosting for the first time, Lainey Wilson slipped into the role of MC effortlessly, exuding charm and grace, even as she navigated a tired monologue and endured a bit in which she was lassoed off the stage. The fact that Wilson can also command a TV broadcast as a performer, and her 4x4 by You was an understated highlight of the night, puts her in the same class as Reba, arguably any country awards show's greatest host. Let's hope the CMA brings Wilson back next year, but leave the boys at home.
Talking about Luke Bryan, and they mentioned the quarterback. Of course, that was Peyton Manning, who I think is absolutely hilarious, right? So other WTF moments, Morgan Wallen and other A-listers are MIA. This year, country music's crossover pop appeal and cultural prominence has never been higher. Beyonce released Cowboy Carter. Zach Bryan sold out football stadiums. Tyler Childers, proved that Appalachian fiddle throwbacks can be TikTok hits. And Morgan Wallen continues to be the most popular country megastar of the streaming era. But none of those artists were in the building last night, meaning that last Wednesday, nor was there any mention of them over the course of the 3 hours, other than Jeff Bridges announcing the winner of Entertainer of the Year, Morgan Wallen.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Well, listen, all of those shows it's hard to host. It's hard.
It looks
the
easy.
Whole thing, it looks easy, but boy, it doesn't take much to go off the rails. And it sounds like this one maybe.
Lainey killed it. I mean, she's legit. I'm just so happy for her. And of course, having a little skin in the game, knowing some of the people who play with her, and just so proud of all they've achieved and continued success. Lainey, great job.
Very cool. This other one from Music Business Worldwide, Shazam, that's the app Shazam, tops 100 billion song recognitions since launch. Apple-owned music identification app Shazam has announced a milestone surpassing 100 billion song recognitions since its launch. Apple acquired Shazam back in 2018 for $400 million.
Right, and when they acquired them in 2018, they had 1 billion song recognitions. Now it's 100 billion. I can't even wrap my head around that number. Shazam says that number equates to approximately 12 songs identified for every person on the planet. To put it into perspective, Shazam says that reaching this number would require an individual to use Shazam to identify a song every second for 3,168 consecutive years.
In case you were wondering. Olive Schusser, who's Apple's vice president of Apple Music and Beats, said this monumental milestone not only reflects how much people enjoy using Shazam, but also their appetite for new music. Music discovery is at the core of everything we do, and we keep innovating to make sure music lovers around the world can tap the Shazam button no matter where they hear music playing.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know both of us use Shazam. You more than probably anybody I know. I absolutely love that app, and I don't just use it to identify songs that I absolutely love. Sometimes I'm just curious, like, who is that? And I'll hit it, and it identifies it for me. But I love creating playlists out of things that I've Shazammed. I've only got a couple hundred Shazams on my app. Tell the audience how many you have.
So this morning I have 2,580 songs that I have saved in my Shazam app. And as I told you, if I could only have one app, that's the one I'd use.
Yeah.
Because, we grew up in a time where, and you and I were talking about this earlier before we hit record, where, if you heard a song out in the wild, you're going shopping
Sure.
at the Gap, whatever.
Yeah.
And, you I like this song. I like that. You can try to remember a couple of lyrics, and then you'd go to a record store.
That's right.
And you'd go up to this, you'd ask the person at the counter, you'd try to sing it to them, and they'd kind of look at you like you're an idiot. And no, I don't know that song. And then you'd go and look in this huge yellow page.
The phonologue?
Right? The phonologue.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
By the way, I was one of those record store clerks, and I never looked down on anybody. And we loved it when people came in and said, they'd hum part of a song or they'd sing a lyric, and we're like, I know what that is. Or we'd huddle and go, anybody know what this thing is? So congratulations, Shazam, on this incredible milestone. And in case you don't know, since Apple, in 2018 bought Shazam, that data on people using Shazam is in your Apple Music for Artists. So you can go in there and see where people are Shazamming. When I say where, what city, not necessarily the coffee shop they were at, but you can see what city, and it's really great. So if you have, you're getting some sync, or you're getting some local airplay, or it's being played in local skate shops or coffee shops or whatever it is, you can actually go in there each week and kind of see how that's trending. And it's super interesting information.
Wonderful technology.
Yeah.
Also from our friend Glenn Peoples over at Billboard and his Ledger newsletter, or the Ledger newsletter, why subscription growth is the barometer for major label success in 2024. With investors increasingly focused on streaming gains, the big three are looking at ways to supercharge subscriber growth in the U.S. and emerging markets.
Interesting. Glenn writes that in the last 4 months, 2 of the 3 major labels have seen their stock price punished for missing expectations of subscription growth, right? So effectively sending the message that in 2024, delivering substantial revenue gains isn't enough. In its fourth quarter earnings on Thursday, that was November 21st, Warner Music Group revealed streaming growth of 8.2%, which was below some analyst estimates. So helping explain why the company's share price fell 7.4% on Thursday and erased approximately $1.29 billion of market value.
Well, and the same thing happened to Universal Music Group back in July, albeit to a far greater extent when its lower than expected second quarter subscription growth led to a 24% drop in its share price despite total revenue climbing 8.7%. To say analysts and investors place a great deal of attention on streaming growth is an understatement. During WMG, Warner Music Group's earnings calls on Thursday, 6 of the 10 questions from analysts concerning subscription revenue, including topics such as drivers and expected growth, the setting of wholesale rates, and how streaming royalties are calculated and distributed.
This is super interesting. So they're still gaining. These companies are still having these increases in streaming, but because they weren't up to the expectations, their stock price is taking a hit. And that's because analysts and the investors they speak to, they know that platforms like Spotify and YouTube, they're critical to record labels and publishers' fortunes. Constantly pulled back to the topic of music subscription. Robert Kinsel and Warner Music Group CFO Brian Castellani, they attempted to quell any concerns that streaming growth is sort of petering out, explaining how Warner Music Group intends to obtain high single-digit subscription revenue growth, even as that growth has been slowing relatively. Few Americans have a music streaming subscription, at least when compared to streaming video on demand. So when you compare the two, right? So those are options like Netflix. So during the call, Robert Kinsel noted that subscription penetration in the United States is 30%, but SVOD, that video on demand, those services are at 50%. Quote, there's a lot more to grow in the United States for music, he said.
Right. So lately, though, the success of music streaming platforms has looked one-sided. The licensees, not the licensors, appear to be keeping most of the spoils of price increases and subscriber acquisitions. As one Warner Music Group analyst put it, the music label's content is a must-have for digital service providers, the DSPs, such as Spotify, but a lot of value has instead accrued to the DSPs rather than content owners. At least by one measure, Spotify has reaped the benefits of price increases far more than major labels. Since Spotify announced its first U.S. price increase on July 23rd of last year, its share price has risen 177% compared to, hit the sad trombones, 3% for UMG and 4% for Warner Music Group.
That's less, right?
Yes, it is. Just a little bit.
You know what I love about the Ledger newsletter is that, Glenn, he's on these calls. He's not relying on somebody else's reporting. He goes on and he listens and he makes sense of this stuff. And he's the guy I call, when I want to make sense of this. So again, subscribe to the Ledger newsletter. You can get it for free, Billboard. You can also read Glenn's full story on this in Billboard Pro.
Well, Jay, before we hit the big stories, let's thank our sponsors because, man, we really appreciate the heavy lifting they do for us every week.
Yeah, we're so appreciative to have them. The first one is the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC. It's a nonprofit organization that's making a big difference for songwriters, music publishers, and other rights holders by transforming how they receive mechanical streaming royalties from services like Spotify and Apple Music in the United States. Every month, the MLC collects the streaming data and royalties from those platforms. It matches the money to the creator who's earned it, and then they pay them. So, or their publishers and admin partners, the royalties they're due. So to date, the MLC has already distributed over $2.5 billion in total royalties and has nearly 50,000 members worldwide. If you're a songwriter, composer, or lyricist with music streaming, or a publisher or admin, you need to become a member of the MLC to ensure that you're not leaving any money on the table. Best of all, membership is completely free, and the MLC pays out 100% of the royalties it receives. Visit themlc.com to learn more.
Oh, such great work they are doing over there. Also, big thanks to Soundtrack, music for business. The good news is that 33% of consumers discover new music they hear played in businesses, such as restaurants, retail establishments, bars, hotels, etc. The bad news is that over 70% of U.S. small and mid-sized businesses are misusing music, resulting in a loss to music creators, rights holders, and the music industry to a tune of over $1.3 billion per year in the U.S. alone. Soundtrack is the leading music streaming service for business, providing music to more than 80,000 businesses globally. To learn more, jump over to soundtrack.app/artist-guide. And if you ever look at those terms of use for Spotify or Apple Music, you scroll down all the way and you say, I agree. If you look in there really closely, you can't use music in your store. You can't just do that in a restaurant.
You have to pay for it. And a lot of people aren't paying for it. And it's not necessarily nefarious. Some of them don't know, but Soundtrack makes it super easy. So check out Soundtrack. A special thank you to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. You want to change the tempo or pitch of your song, adjust instruments or vocals, mute background noise in a movie. Music.ai makes all of that super easy. It's embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers. Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of music every single day. They can process yours. Visit music.ai to get started.
Oh my God. And I love the tools in music.
I do too.
Yeah. They are so freaking cool.
Yes.
We are also sponsored by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a stunning website and online store for your music in minutes. All the features you need are already built in, including dozens of fully customizable templates, tools to sell your music and merch, commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list, integrations with Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, Bands in Town, and more, so you can easily add content from your other online profiles, plus live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Website plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes hosting and your own free custom domain name. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go over to bandzoogle.com and try it free for 30 days and use the promo code Morning Coffee, that's all one word, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Morning Coffee.
We love Bands in Town. I mean, I just said Bands in Town. Bandzoogle, a lot of band names.
Both,
we love Bandzoogle. In fact, our Your Morning Coffee website was built with Bandzoogle. We're also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Ilana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank. They're published by Live Music Discovery and Marketing Platform. There's that Bands in Town.
Bands in Town, exactly. Over 90 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform connecting over 590,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. And Bands in Town, I think it was the first app I downloaded on my iPhone.
Was it Bands in Town?
Yeah,
By the way, we're going to have to change our ad script there because I was reading last week. In fact, we had Fabrice Sergent on Music Biz Weekly podcast. Instead of 590,000 artists, now it's up to 650,000 artists.
Good for them.
Good for them.
Fantastic. And every week for now 224 episodes plus some special editions, I get to hang out with my good friend Jay Gilbert. He is a music industry consultant. He's the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and former executive of Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups. And he owns every single football card of every team every year that the Minnesota Vikings have been in existence.
Can you believe that? That's a long time. And I get to do this show every week with Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music Group, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group. And today was no different. Typically, we hop on for about an hour before we even hit record and talk about documentaries that are coming out or what music we saw or, can you believe, he wore that belt with those shoes? What was he thinking, And that's one of my favorite things I look forward to every weekend is just getting on with Mike and talking about music. And I had a lunch yesterday with my good friend Mike Angstrom from Rhino.
From Rhino, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to work with him, and he's such a great guy and a great musician too, by the way. And just like a lot of people in music, we just sat down and talked about music. And that's sort of that was the genesis of this podcast is you and I used to meet when you were driving by on the freeway. I'd just meet you right off the freeway near me. We'd go and, have lunch and talk about, hey, did you read that book that came out? And, I'm looking for this guitar. Did you hear about that thing? And, eventually we decided, we should probably record this.
Exactly. And we both order the same thing, which is we get kids cheeseburger. You get cheeseburger. Yeah, we ordered them slightly different, but we kind of looked at each other like, really? You ordered the kids cheeseburger?
Oh,
too?
that's so funny.
Yes,
so
indeed.
funny. We haven't done that in a while. We need to do that again.
Well, we're overdue.
Yeah,
we are
definitely
overdue. Yes. All right. Well, let's jump into the stories. It's from Chris Muratori at Luminate, the growth of vinyl and the impact of independent record stores on vinyl sales. While many in our industry focus on streaming consumption and the billions of streams that occur weekly, there is another consumption format that has shown growth year after year for the last 18 years straight. Vinyl album sales. In fact, vinyl album sales growth began long before streaming even emerged as a way to consume music.
Right. Since 2016, vinyl album sales have increased from 13.1 million to 49.6 million in 2023 last year. A growth of nearly 300% over the last 8 years. It's incredible. The total number of vinyl albums purchased since 2016 is 225 million. So which strata had the biggest impact over that time, accounting for 45% of all vinyl sales and equaling more than 100 million sales total? Well, that would be independent record stores. And I'd like to interject here, Mike, that's new vinyl. We're not even talking about used vinyl. And when we did that vinyl roundtable, there were some people that were estimating it was like 80-90% of the vinyl that's sold is used. So all of these great numbers are new vinyl.
Yes, unreal. So with Black Friday, let's try that again. With Black Friday Record Store Day approaching in a couple of weeks, we can report on the current impact that independent record stores are making in 2024. So since June, when a new modeling methodology was implemented, indie stores have accounted for 40% of all vinyl album sales and 29% of all physical sales. In both cases, this marks the largest strata when measuring where consumers have gone to purchase vinyl.
Right. Chris goes on to say that while the impact of the indie stores hasn't changed, the people shopping for vinyl at said stores over the years, they have changed. The average vinyl music buyer continues to skew younger. We recently added 2 new questions to our Luminate Insights Music 360 survey to determine where consumers purchased their vinyl over the last 12 months, as well as who had gone to an indie record store to celebrate Record Store Day this past April.
Right. So 37% of all vinyl buyers in the past 12 months purchased a vinyl album at an independent record store, which was the response with the highest percentage. Mm-hmm. The age breakdown of indie store buyers showed that 24% of consumers were 24 years old or younger, and 41% were under 35 years old. However, the age segment with the largest number of indie store buyers was that of consumers between the ages of 35 to 44 years old, with 20%.
Right. He goes on to say that when looking at who attended Record Store Day, about a third of all consumers who had purchased vinyl over the previous 12 months also went to an indie store on Record Store Day. That was April 20th. And of course, we have the Black Friday one coming up. Looking at the age breakdown of who participated in this annual indie store shopping event, 46% of those consumers were under the age of 35. I think that's incredible. 27% were under 25 years of age, and 16% were between the ages of 13 and 17. And I remember during the vinyl roundtable, we were sort of joking around that some of the first Record Store Days, a bunch of old white guys like us. You know, they said they were like balding and they had beards. Well, that's not the case anymore. Now it's skewing much younger. And I can attest to that from this last Record Store Day when I went in there shopping and I'm looking around. And there were a lot of young people in there buying the vinyls.
Yes, and my nearby record store, which is Salzer's.
That's where I went.
Also, my friend. Yeah, exactly. And then Grady's Record Refuge, which is nearby as well. Same thing. You know, you recognize that. It's like they're my kids' age, and I love that. I think it's super cool. And again, we keep saying this, and I will say it again. I never saw this coming. Like when we couldn't get vinyl out the door fast enough and bring in CDs, and yet it just look at what has happened, and it's remarkable and just. It's lovely.
It really is lovely. It's a lot of fun. It's just a different way to listen to music. It's more lean forward. It's more engaged. And I just got some new vinyl yesterday, and I'm putting it on the turntable, and I'm looking through the liner notes, and there's a little booklet there, and I'm listening to it, and I can't go do anything else because it's going to end in about 19 minutes. And then you flip the side over, and I don't know, there's something romantic about it. There's something engaging about it. And I love the fact, that we've gone from, it was sort of left for dead 18 years ago. And now it's, it's fandom, it's consumption. It's super cool.
Well, let's jump back to streaming, Jay. And this next story, it's from Music Business Worldwide by our friend Daniel Tenser. Super premium music subscription tiers coming in 2025, and 3 other things we learned from Universal Music's Boyd Muir at the Morgan Stanley Conference. So you may remember Boyd Muir. He's the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer at Universal Music Group. He expects super premium subscription tiers to start appearing in 2025, and he expects that between 20 and 30% of paying music subscribers will eventually sign up.
Right. This is another one of those super fan stories, right, that we've been talking about. Next year, you'll see the first of these offerings. Muir told an audience at Morgan Stanley's European Tech, Media, and Telecom Conference, and that was in Barcelona last week. While the term super premium, that's been attached specifically to Spotify's plans for a new deluxe subscription tour, Muir noted that other digital service providers are also planning their own versions of a subscription tier meant to appeal to the super fans who are willing to pay more for music subscriptions in exchange for a better music experience.
So Super Premium, or Music Pro, as the case may be, will be a deluxe version of Spotify that has all of the benefits that the normal Spotify version has, but a lot more control, a lot higher quality across the board, and some other things we're not really ready to talk about just yet. That's what Daniel Ek said earlier this year. We've done lots and lots of consumer research on this because it's been very important to us, but also all the platforms are doing their own research, and it's kind of all colliding in the range of somewhere between 20 and 30% of today's existing subscribers, he said.
Super interesting. Notably, he suggested that this is the proportion of listeners willing to shell out twice as much for a subscription that offers additional benefits. While Spotify's Daniel Ek suggested the super premium tier would cost maybe $5 more per month than the premium tier, or $16.99 per month in the U.S. at current prices. Muir's assessment suggests that the price point would be closer to $22 or $24 per month for these deluxe tiers. That could be possible in the United States. But here are 3 things that Music Business Worldwide learned from Boyd Muir at the Morgan Stanley Conference.
Indeed. So number 1, UMG, that's Universal Music Group, has 1,300 direct-to-consumer stores, and the margins are huge. UMG isn't just counting on music streaming services to monetize superfans for them. At the company's most recent Capital Markets Day this past September, the company's leadership highlighted a growing focus on direct-to-consumer, that's D2C business.
Yeah, it's big. So far, the strategy is proving very successful, UMG's EVP of Digital Strategy, Michael Nash, he said that the company's D2C business has seen a 33% compound annual growth rate, CAGR, making it easily one of Universal's fastest growing business segments.
And at the Morgan Stanley conference this week, Muir expanded on that, reporting that UMG now has 1,300 D2C stores. For example, TaylorSwift.com catering directly to music fans. We've been quietly kind of building this as a revenue stream for a good few years now, Muir said.
Yeah, it's big business. He noted that the consumer base for these stores has grown to around 50 million people. And that was measured by the number of people who opted in to receive communications from UMG. And because there's no such thing as a fan for just one artist, there's plenty of potential for consumers to cross over from store to store.
So not only is the D2C business growing rapidly, it is also yielding high margins. While touring has margins of 8 to 10% and music retail has margins around 15%, D2C margins are more in the range of 25%, Muir said.
Yeah, but he noted that those margins might not stay quite as high as the D2C business grows because it's in its early stages. D2C has sold some, quote, very high-priced products where the demand has been exceptional, unquote. Nonetheless, he expects demand to remain strong in the D2C segment. He said that when we develop a product and we connect the fan with the artist, with that product, the demand is breathtaking.
Right. So number 2 of things they noted, the switch to artist-centric payment models isn't happening as quickly as UMG would like. Universal Music Group is undoubtedly the leading company in the music industry, pushing for changes to streaming services payout model.
Right. And you'll remember we talk a lot about the pro rata versus user-centric or artist-centric models. And, UMG chairman and CEO, Sir Lucian Grange, he's really credited with coining the phrase artist-centric to describe a new payment model that, in the broadest terms, places greater value on those artists who have the largest and most devoted fan bases. And they do the most to bring listeners to the music streaming services.
Right, so artist-centric marks a significant departure from the pro rata model traditionally used by DSPs to calculate royalties. Under the pro rata model, each stream of a song counts equally towards royalty payouts, regardless of whether that song is from a popular artist with an engaged fan base, or whether it comes from a fraudulent track composed of noise or copyright infringing material.
While UMG and others argue the artist-centric model helps them to stem the tide of streaming fraud, some people, like Believe CEO Dennis Latagayer, have criticized the model as disadvantaging new artists by making it harder for them to start earning from streaming.
Well, however, since the Deezer deals, we've seen little progress on the artist-centric model. One exception may be Spotify's tweak to its payment model, which can be seen as shifting towards a semi-artist-centric model with a new rule implementing it at the start of the year that requires a track to receive a minimum of 1,000 plays over the previous 12 months to qualify for royalty payments.
Right. At the Morgan Stanley conference, Muir conceded that the switch to artist-centric isn't happening as quickly as UMG would like. Would we like it to be faster? He said, yeah, we would, because everything we do, we like to happen quickly. There's a very real issue with fraud. And for the sake of our artists and our songwriters, we're going to be very active in working with all of the platforms to eliminate fraud, at least to the best extent possible.
Right. All right. So number 3, UMG wants to overtake Sony as the world's biggest music publisher. While Universal Music Group may be the world's biggest music recording company, it isn't the world's largest music publisher, which of course is the owner of musical compositions underlying recorded music. That's what publishers are.
That's right. And that distinction belongs to Sony Music, whose Sony Music Publishing division owns some 5.5 million songs as of 2022, or more than half of all the compositions owned by the 3 majors, which is Sony, Universal, and Warner.
Right. And so Muir said at the Morgan Stanley conference, and we don't like that. While Boyd, Muir didn't offer any specific numbers, he said he's sure that's Sony, can feel us coming, Jay. Okay. All right. Our last story from the New York Times. Peter Baker over there. No more nostalgia concerts, please. the culture industry keeps getting better at monetizing the past, including the new ritual of musicians playing old albums in full on stage.
Yeah, that's been going on for a while, and I actually like it. But okay, no, this was a really
Peter
great
does
piece.
not.
From Peter Baker. He writes that in March, the rock band Weezer announced plans to celebrate the 30th anniversary of their self-titled debut album, known by fans as the Blue Album, with a special tour. At every stop, they would play the album in its entirety from front to back. I was tempted to buy a ticket and spend an evening among my cohort, transported back in time, but as I watched the video announcing the tour, I also felt a nagging sense of deja vu.
Right, he said, I assumed I was just reacting to the whole ritual of touring years-old albums, a concept that has become a staple of the industry. It emerged in the mid-2000s with a curated series of relatively small concerts, self-consciously titled Don't Look Back, but within a decade it had become big business. In 2016, Bruce Springsteen toured the world playing the entirety of his 1980 album, The River. U2 came aboard in 2017 with a massive tour where they played the whole of The Joshua Tree from 1987, which I was actually at. Mm-hmm. Now these exercises are commonplace. Just this year, concertgoers could catch anything from the rap icon Nas playing Olive Illmatic, the 30th anniversary, to the country star Clint Black playing Killin' Time, the 35th, to the punk pop band Green Day playing both Dookie, the 30th anniversary, and American Idiot, the 20th anniversary albums, mostly from an era when people expressed their love for records by actually buying them.
They sure did. Then it came to me, he writes, it wasn't just that Weezer's Blue Album tour was the sort of thing that every band seems to be doing these days. It felt familiar because it was something that Weezer themselves had already done 14 years earlier on their Memories tour. Back then, I remember finding the conceit intriguingly novel. Today, that aura of novelty is, itself a distant memory. Notices of new album anniversary tours pop up incessantly in my inbox and social feeds. Taken together, they don't feel like fun experiments or celebrations of beloved albums. They feel like the onward acceleration of a culture industry that is unsettlingly dedicated, not just in our concert halls, but on our screens and everywhere else it can reach us, to monetizing our nostalgic attachment to the media of the past.
Right. Peter says it's easy to sympathize with everyone involved. For fans who grew attached to these albums when they were originally released, the concerts function as powerful shortcuts back to poignant memories and distant modes of feeling. For new fans, they are a chance to reconnect with cultural moments they might have missed the first time around. As for the bands, many are scrambling, looking for ways to pay the bills as albums and tour revenues plummet for all but the most successful artists. Presumably, booking agents are reminding artists that these nostalgia exercises do help sell tickets, while streaming stats are reminding them exactly which of their albums people listen to most. Speaking to Yahoo News back in 2017, Art Alexakis of the band Everclear noted that merchandise sales at their anniversary tours were almost twice as high as at their regular shows. In parentheses, he says, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. Side effects may include buying 2 vinyl LPs and a t-shirt. So musicians become jukeboxes, playing exactly what the data says people want to hear, minimizing the risk of boring anyone with new material or new ideas.
So I'd love to hear what you think about this, because I may have a slightly different view than the author of this piece, because I've seen, maybe 10 of these full album shows. And I mean, I saw Elton John do good. No, it wasn't good, but it was Captain Fantastic in Madison Square Garden in its entirety. And it was absolutely wonderful, because some of those songs he didn't really play live after that time. And if you buy the deluxe edition of that CD, it comes with a concert from, I think it was 1975, where he does that. And I remember, seeing some great Cheap Trick shows where they were doing like In Color and Heaven Tonight in their entirety. And I don't know, I absolutely love those shows. What do you think? Have you seen some of those?
Yeah, I do, but we're also older guys. And so we've got a much longer time on the planet where we have, if you're 35, and maybe this is a 20th anniversary of an artist you saw in 2015 or when you were 15 years old. Well, that's a little different than us going back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I think I think maybe the older you get, the more nostalgic you get, just in terms of your lifespan, I guess. I don't mind them. I don't find them offensive, but clearly most people do like them, and so I think that's, and if you're, we have now, as he pointed out in the article, so much data now to show which songs, which albums are the most popular. And in years past, artists didn't have that data. So I think, and the money is just so good for bands. They're not making money elsewhere. So I'm okay with it. I don't mind it. I can see, I don't not get his point, but that's not my point. I do enjoy it, and I don't mind getting nostalgic. I love to go see new bands as well. So yeah, I guess that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Well,
Josh.
I would only add to that there are two other points. One is, when we do the Behind the Set List podcast, we're looking at setlist.fm and other sources to see what they've played live and sort of asking them questions about it. And I think it sort of breaks things up when you can do an album show, and it's not always an anniversary. For example, I saw the Accidentals when they released an album once, and they, at their release event, they played the album start to finish. And I thought that was really, really cool. So you can do it both ways, but I see his point, but I actually sort of look forward to those things. But
I do too. Well, and also, for a lot of artists too, there's a lot of records that kind of get reevaluated. So albums that might not have been successful the first go around suddenly become very successful. Maybe they're in a movie, or maybe there's just sort of a reassessment of
good point,
how important it was. And so I love, especially, I went and saw the Beach Boys, concert, Brian Wilson up in Santa Barbara, where he did Pet Sounds start to finish. Oh my God, that was fantastic. I saw Steely Dan do one of their album nights where they did Asia start to finish. All of that stuff, pretty cool, I thought. So,
I agree.
But I don't know what to say, Jay. Maybe we are outliers, but I love the article nonetheless from Peter. So as we wrap up the show, if you enjoy the show, please tell one friend. Certainly Jay and I would appreciate that. And big thanks to the MLC, Soundtrack, Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We could not do it without them. So thank you very much to them. So on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I am Mike Etchart. We say thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.